Hi guys, so this is a video lecture on the Essay 2 prompt and outline. So in order to find your prompt, you can go to the Week 5 Learning module, right here, and then the Essay 2 prompt is right here. So you just click on it, it will download, and then you just want to open the file. Let's see if it'll open. Okay, great. So you just click Enable Editing so that you can, scroll through and change anything you want to or take notes. Okay, so our Essay 2, it will be a compare and contrast advertising analysis paper. Okay, and you can see the due date there, and it's due on Blackboard. So we can just go through this here. Every year, companies around the world spend billions of dollars on market research and subsequent advertising, and every year many of these companies see profits both large and small, at least partly because of their advertising efforts. Plain and simple advertising works, but how? And what can we learn about our society by analyzing the ads produced by the hours and millions spent on market research? And how can we learn to be less affected and more entertained by advertising? There's a typo here, affected. So this paragraph simply contextualizes our project on advertising. So just give some background. The meat and potatoes of this prompt is right here. You will pick 2 print, radio, or television ads for the same product that you find compelling, intriguing, irritating, or inspiring. You will need to provide me with copies of the ads, so capture TV ads on video, give me a transcript of the radio ads, or attach the magazine pages to your essay. Now you can also find YouTube ads, and so you can just, I'll tell you about this more later, but all you have to do is copy and paste the links at the end of your essay. So you study your ads many times, ask your friends about them, and compare and contrast the effectiveness of those ads by analyzing their use of rhetorical strategies. In other words, you will decide which ad is more effective in convincing the audience to purchase the product. To do this, you will need to compare and contrast the use of strategies. Your goal is to construct an account of the arguments in the ads. An account is not the same as a summary, although you will need to do some summary. Your paper should first explain how the ad's use of specific kinds of evidence supports the argument and how the argument is constructed. Evaluate how well the author convinces his or her intended audience to buy the product. Notice it's in bold there. That is the most important thing. That is the goal of the whole paper. Evaluate how well the author convinces his or her intended audience to buy the product. Keep in mind, you are not agreeing or disagreeing with the ad's argument, only analyzing it. So, in essence, what you're going to do is look on YouTube or any other way that you can find advertisements, and you're going to find 2 ads for the same product but different companies. The same product but different companies. So you can do 2 different brands of deodorant, Old Spice and Axe. You can do 2 different sodas, Coke and Pepsi. But the product itself is the same, but the companies are different. They're competing companies. So the only way that you can decide which product the audience is going to buy is if it's the same product. You can't do an ad on potato chips or you can't do a paper on potato chips and soda, right? You can't decide which one the audience will buy, right? You need to make sure that the product is the same so that it's a fair choice. It's like comparing apples and oranges. Make sure it's apples and apples or oranges and oranges. So essentially what you're going to do, you pick your ads, and then what I would recommend is taking notes while you're watching the ads and find all the rhetorical strategies you can for each one, and then organize it into an outline. And we'll talk about the outline in just a minute. But your main goal is picking which one is more convincing, which one would the audience buy. And you're going to do that by evaluating the strategies. So how well do they use identification or pathos or exemplification, description, things like that. So successful essays will accurately and effectively introduce and contextualize the topic, ad, project, and argument in the intro, have a clear statement that indicates how the paper will proceed, indicate a clear focus and a well-written thesis and stay true to that focus throughout the essay, give an account of the ad's argument, project, and central claims, This means you will need to identify strategies in the advertisement and explain how they support the claim and whether or not they help to persuade the audience to buy the product. So this is the most important thing. It's the goal of the whole paper. Discuss what has been learned about the topic when placed in context. Sorry about this. Implements proper stylistic conventions. Smoothly integrate supporting evidence, so you will need to have evidence from your ads. So if you say that the ad is using identification, then you need to quote or describe a scene in which the ad is using identification, right? That's going to be your evidence. Be cohesive with a clear structure that uses effective transitions to hold together the discussion. Include proper MLA, of course, and be carefully edited. And then it's 3 to 5 pages. Okay? So have fun, think creatively and carefully. Be sure to provide evidence to back up your assertions. So what I'm going to do now is show you the outline, because I think this will be a lot clearer once we talk about that. So if we go back to our learning module here, the outline is right underneath the prompt. So you just click on that. Okay, here it is. Okay, so this is our outline. So there's 2 ways that you can organize this, okay? So the sample 1 would be one side at a time, okay? And that's what we learned about in our book for the compare and contrast chapter. So one side at a time means in the body of the essay, the first part of the paper will talk all about ad 1, and the second part of the paper will talk all about ad 2, okay? So this means I would use this structure if the strategies in your in your ads don't match. So for example here, say the strategy 1 for ad 1 was narration, and maybe the strategy 2 was exemplification. Then maybe this one would be identification and compare and contrast. So again, I would use this structure if, like I mentioned, the strategies for ad 1 and the strategies for ad 2 are different, okay? And the other option would be to go point by point. So this one you want to use if all the strategies in the ads, in the 2 ads, are the same. So say for example, both ad 1 and ad 2 use pathos. So you would compare pathos for ad 1 and ad 2 in that paragraph, and then explain which one had the better use of pathos. And then so on. So body 2, maybe it's exemplification. So you talk about ad 1's use of exemplification, and then ad 2's use of exemplification, and then which one had the better exemplification. And then the same thing for the last, or however many body paragraphs you need. In both cases, in the conclusion, you want to explain overall, so this means not just repeating what you said in the body paragraphs, but overall, which one would the audience be more likely to buy. So in order not to repeat yourself, you want to be a little bit more general in the conclusion. And you can also have, say for example, you know, ad 1 has really good narration, but the exemplification isn't so great. And then ad 2, the identification is good, but the compare and contrast isn't so great. Then in the conclusion, you'd want to talk about, okay, so they both have strengths and weaknesses, but overall, for example, ad 2 is more effective because for that specific audience of, you know, so-and-so audience members, they would be more likely to be intrigued by identification versus narration, or something to that effect. And then you could do the same thing with either structure. And then the intro for both of the structures would be the same. So you want to have a little bit of context on advertising, you want to introduce both the ads, and then you want to have your thesis. And your thesis can be either a project statement, which would say this paper will compare and contrast 2 advertisements, or you can actually say, you know, the Axe commercial had the better rhetorical strategies. So you can either make your decision right there in the thesis statement, or you can have more of a project statement more of a project statement by saying this essay will compare and contrast. Either of those two thesis options are perfectly acceptable for this paper. And so this is basically the structure for the paper. Now there is a way that you can combine these structures. So say for example, some of the strategies are the same for both of the advertisements, but some of them are different. So there's a way that you can do that. Just keep one structure, in the beginning of the essay, and then make it clear that you're switching to another structure. So for example, maybe you have narration for ad 1, and then maybe identification for ad 2, but then the last body paragraph, they both have compare and contrast, right? So just make sure that if you're using both structures that you do one first and then the other one, so that it's not all over the place. Otherwise, feel free to just stick to one of these two, and that should be a pretty easy way to go. Now in every body paragraph, you want to name the strategy, so I'll put that here, name the strategy. You want to have evidence for the strategy, and you want to analyze. So this means explain how the strategy supports the claim of the ad, and then also explain the effectiveness of the strategy in convincing the specific audience to buy the product. So specific audience is key here. You want to make sure that you're not just saying everybody or consumers in general, right? If you're doing a, say for example, Kotex commercial, your audience is probably not going to be men, right? And it's probably going to be younger females. So you want to make sure that you discuss a very specific audience. And this is a good way to talk about the effectiveness, right? Is it effective for that specific audience, all right? And so if you have any questions, please feel free to email me or post to the Q&A discussion board.